Imagine sitting at home on a quiet evening when suddenly, bam, 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 a knock rattles your front door. On your porch stand three men in dark uniforms with bold letters across their chest. HOA police. They claim you're under arrest for having tall grass, wrong trash bins, and even suspicious visitors. Sounds ridiculous, right? But here's the twist. These weren't real cops. And the man they tried to arrest? He wasn't just a homeowner. He was one of the FBI's most feared undercover agents. And what happened next? Nobody in that neighborhood will ever forget. The knock at the door. It all started with a knock. Not the gentle kind. Not the type you hear when a friendly neighbor drops by to return a dish or borrow some sugar. No, this was different. This knock was sharp, loud, and aggressive. It was the kind of knock that instantly raises your blood pressure. The kind that makes your stomach twist before your brain even catches up. Inside his quiet suburban home, Marcus Johnson froze in place. His heart gave one hard thump against his chest, and for a split second the world around him fell completely silent. He lived in a peaceful neighborhood where knocks usually meant package deliveries, kids selling cookies, or the occasional neighborly hello. But this was no friendly visit. Marcus slowly rose from his armchair. At 45, he was a tall man with broad shoulders, the kind of presence that made people take him seriously even when he said nothing. Calm, measured. That was Marcus. He was used to thinking 3 steps ahead in every situation. Still, this knock had caught him off guard. He walked to the door, peering through the peephole. That's when his brow furrowed. On his front porch stood 3 men in dark uniforms. Their jackets bore big white letters across the chest. HOA police. Marcus had lived here for 5 years, and never once had he heard of an HOA police. He knew about the Homeowners Association. Sure, they sent letters about lawn care and neighborhood meetings, but actual police? Armed men standing on his porch claiming authority? That was something new. He opened the door a few inches, just enough to get a better look. The men were stone-faced. One of them, tall with a buzz cut and cheap sunglasses, stepped forward aggressively and barked, "You're under arrest for violation of neighborhood codes." For a moment, Marcus almost laughed. Arrested for what? His lawn was freshly cut. His trash bins lined up neatly on the curb and his driveway spotless. He paid his HOA dues on time every time. Nothing about this made sense. But Marcus didn't laugh. Instead, he narrowed his eyes, his calm voice cutting through the tense air. Arrested? On what grounds? The man shoved a piece of paper toward him. It looked like a warrant, though Marcus instantly noticed the flimsy quality of the paper and the smudged ink. The so-called charges? Unapproved mailbox color, grass height exceeding 2.5 inches, failure to remove seasonal decorations. Marcus's lips twitched with disbelief. His mailbox was standard issue. His grass was perfect. His porch had nothing but a welcome mat. Whoever these men were, they clearly had no idea who they were dealing with. Before Marcus could say another word, one of them reached for his arm, trying to snap a pair of cheap handcuffs around his wrist. That's when Marcus took a half step back, his entire demeanor shifting. His eyes hardened. His jaw set. Something about the way he carried himself changed instantly, though the men couldn't quite put their finger on it. The calm, quiet homeowner they thought they could bully suddenly radiated authority, the kind of authority that makes even criminals hesitate. Inside, Marcus's thoughts were racing. He had been in situations like this before, though not at his own doorstep. The aggression, the fake authority, the sloppy paperwork, it all screamed setup. But the question was, why him? He quickly scanned the men again. Their uniforms didn't fit properly. The badges on their chests were made of cheap plastic, and none of them carried themselves like real officers. Their belts were mismatched, their boots unpolished. Everything about them screamed impostor. Marcus lifted his chin and spoke slowly, deliberately. "Gentlemen, before you put your hands on me again, I suggest you stop and think very carefully about what you're doing." The leader smirked. "Don't get smart with us. You broke the rules. We're here to take you in." But something in Marcus's steady tone unsettled the group. They were expecting fear, panic, maybe even begging. Instead, they found themselves facing a man who wasn't flinching, wasn't scared, and wasn't backing down. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that Marcus Johnson wasn't just any ordinary homeowner. Behind that calm expression and ordinary suburban life was a past filled with secrets, missions, and danger. He wasn't a man who got rattled by 3 imposters with fake badges. The men on his porch thought they had the upper hand. They thought this was just another easy target, another homeowner they could intimidate into handing over money or signing fake fines. But they had made a mistake, a big one, because Marcus wasn't just anybody. He was a man who had been trained to recognize lies, spot fraud, and dismantle threats from the inside out. These so-called HOA police had just picked the worst possible house in the entire neighborhood to mess with. And in that moment, standing at his door, facing 3 strangers, trying to cuff him on his own porch, Marcus realized something chilling. This was no random visit. They had come for him. And that's when this strange story took a shocking turn. Who were they really after? The so-called HOA police didn't waste a second. The tallest one, the man with the buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses, stepped closer and shoved a sheet of paper in Marcus's face. "This is your warrant," he barked. Marcus took the paper, holding it between 2 fingers. The document was laughable. Off-center text, typos, and a fake seal that looked like it had been printed off the internet. Bold words across the top read, "HOA violations, arrest order." The charges? Grass height exceeding neighborhood standards. Trash bins placed incorrectly. Suspicious visitors at late hours. Marcus almost chuckled. His yard was immaculate. Neighbors often complimented it. His bins were lined up like soldiers every Thursday morning, and his only late-night visitors were Amazon delivery drivers dropping off packages. But the imposters didn't crack a smile. Their faces were tight, their eyes scanning the property as though they had authority here. Buzzcut leaned in. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Step outside, sir. You're coming with us." Marcus tilted his head, studying them like a chess player observing sloppy opponents. He didn't panic. He didn't flinch. Instead, his deep, steady voice rolled out with a calm weight that immediately unsettled the group. "Gentlemen," Marcus said slowly, "before you go any further, do you even know who you're talking to?" The leader of the group smirked, confident in his performance. He sneered, "Yeah, a rule-breaking homeowner. That's all we need to know." But in truth, they didn't know. They had no idea, because Marcus Johnson wasn't just some random homeowner in a suburban cul-de-sac. He wasn't just a man who trimmed his hedges and paid his dues on time. He was much more. Behind the quiet smile and unassuming life, Marcus carried a resume that could silence entire rooms. He was one of the most feared undercover agents in the FBI. Man whose name whispered through criminal networks like a storm approaching. Over the course of 2 decades, Marcus had dismantled South American cartels that thought they were untouchable. He had infiltrated cybercrime rings so deep that hackers believed he was one of them. He had stood across from foreign spies, negotiated with arms dealers, and even spent months in disguises, so flawless that not even his closest colleagues recognized him. Marcus had stared death in the face more times than he could count. And every time, he had walked away. He didn't just survive, he won. But he never bragged about it. Never advertised it. The neighbors only knew him as the friendly guy who waved when he jogged in the mornings. The kids down the street only knew him as the man who handed out king-size candy bars on Halloween. To most people, Marcus was invisible, just another homeowner, blending into the quiet rhythm of suburban life. That invisibility was his greatest weapon, and these imposters had just mistaken it for weakness. Marcus took a small step back into his doorway. His body relaxed, but his mind razor-sharp. He was already assessing them, their body language, the way their eyes darted, the inconsistencies in their uniforms. One wore sneakers instead of boots. Another's holster was strapped on backward. Their fake authority cracked under every detail Marcus noticed. But something bothered him. They hadn't chosen him randomly. Criminals who went door to door with fake HOA badges didn't just stumble onto a man like Marcus. No, this felt deliberate. The fake warrant. The intimidation tactics. The insistence that he was hiding suspicious visitors. This wasn't about grass, trash bins, or mailboxes. This was about Marcus himself. The question clawed at his mind. Who were they really after? Had one of his past missions caught up to him? Had someone recognized his face from an operation overseas? Or were these imposters working for someone bigger? Someone who wanted Marcus silenced? The smirking leader broke Marcus's train of thought. Look, you can either cooperate or we'll drag you out. Your choice. Marcus didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just studied them, his expression calm, almost amused. Inside, however, his instincts sharpened. These men thought they had him cornered, but the truth was they had just stepped into the lion's den. Marcus let a faint smile tug at the corner of his lips, the kind of smile that said, "You really don't know what you've just done." And as the impostors grew impatient, unaware of the storm they had awakened, one thing became clear. This wasn't just an HOA dispute. This was the beginning of something far bigger, and Marcus Johnson, the FBI's shadow, the hunter of hunters, was about to turn the tables. The trap springs back. Marcus didn't rush. He didn't argue. He didn't slam the door in their faces. Instead, he played along. He wanted to see just how far these imposters were willing to go. He crossed his arms, pretending to look annoyed, and sighed. All right. If you're so sure, let me grab my ID inside. That should clear things up." The three fake officers exchanged smug glances. To them, it looked like their intimidation was working. The homeowner was folding. Another easy victim. "Make it quick," the leader snapped, pushing his way forward. Marcus stepped aside, gesturing them in. The trio strutted into the house, barking orders as if they owned the place. One of them ran a hand across the bookshelf. Another glanced at the family photos on the wall, all while pretending to be in control. But what they didn't know was that the second the front door clicked shut, the entire atmosphere of the home changed. Marcus's house wasn't just a suburban living space. It was a fortress disguised as ordinary. Hidden within the walls were security systems, designed by some of the best minds in federal operations. Small cameras, no bigger than shirt buttons, recorded every movement. Motion sensors embedded in the floor detected unusual patterns. Even the thermostat on the wall doubled as a microphone. The imposters had just walked into the lion's cage, and they didn't even realize it. Marcus moved casually, walking toward the kitchen counter where his wallet supposedly sat. But as he passed by the bookshelf, his fingers brushed a hidden panel. Behind that shelf wasn't just dusty novels. It was a safe room, stocked with enough gear to handle anything from a burglary to an armed raid. Guns, tactical armor, secure communication lines. Marcus had prepared for every scenario, though he rarely needed them in his quiet neighborhood. Today, however, preparation was about to pay off. While pretending to fumble for his ID, Marcus subtly tapped the sleek black watch on his wrist. The face of the watch didn't light up, didn't beep, didn't vibrate. But within seconds, a silent signal was transmitted. 3 blocks away, inside an unmarked black SUV, a small team of FBI operatives straightened in their seats. Their earpieces crackled with a single wordless alert. Engage. The imposters inside Marcus's house had no idea. They were now under federal surveillance. Back in the living room, one of the fake cops picked up a framed photo of Marcus smiling with his niece. He sneered, "Family man, huh? Shame you can't follow the rules." Marcus turned his head slowly, fixing him with a calm stare. "Rules?" he repeated. "You really want to talk to me about rules?" His tone was sharp enough to make the man set the photo back down. For the first time, the air shifted. The imposters felt it, something they couldn't quite place. This wasn't how victims were supposed to act. Victims were supposed to cower, to plead, to pay up. But Marcus wasn't giving them fear. He was giving them silence, calculation, control. And it unsettled them. The leader cleared his throat, trying to regain authority. "Look, Johnson, you either pay your fines now or we'll make this ugly." Marcus's lips curled into a faint smile. "Ugly? You haven't seen ugly yet." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The imposters shifted uncomfortably, but they doubled down, puffing their chests and flashing their cheap badges again. One of them pulled a crumpled notebook from his pocket, pretending to jot down infractions. All the while, Marcus's cameras captured everything. Every face, every voice, every threat. Outside, the neighborhood was deceptively calm. Birds chirped. Sprinklers hissed. A dog barked faintly down the street. No one watching from the outside would guess that inside this one home, a trap had just sprung shut. Marcus leaned against the counter, finally pulling out his wallet. He opened it, flipped through the IDs, and stopped on one. He held it up, letting it catch the light. It wasn't a driver's license. It wasn't a homeowner's ID. It was an official gold-embossed badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation. He let them see it for just a split second before snapping the wallet shut again. Long enough to plant doubt. Not long enough for them to process. "Gentlemen," he said in that same unshakable voice, "you should have done your homework. At that exact moment outside the house, the black SUVs began to roll down the street, slow, deliberate, quiet. The cavalry was here, but the imposters still thought they were in control. They thought they had a terrified homeowner in their grip. What they didn't know was that every second they stayed inside Marcus Johnson's house, they were digging their own grave. They hadn't just picked the wrong man. They had walked into the center of an FBI sting operation. One, designed to snap shut the moment Marcus gave the word. And that word was coming very, very soon. Unmasking the pretenders, Marcus finally decided it was time to stop playing along. He had given them enough rope to hang themselves, and now the noose was tightening. He gestured calmly toward the couch. "Why don't you gentlemen take a seat?" The leader scoffed. But the command in Marcus's tone carried more weight than any threat they had made so far. Something in his voice, firm, unshakable, authoritative, made them obey without realizing it. They sat, trying to keep their fake bravado intact. But Marcus could see it, the small twitches, the restless shifting, the cracks forming in their facade. He stood in front of them, hands folded behind his back, as if he were the one running the interrogation. His voice was low and steady when he spoke. "Funny thing about fake uniforms," Marcus began, his words cutting like a blade. "They look real, until you meet someone who's trained to spot the difference." He stepped closer, pointing casually at the man on the left. "That patch? Wrong placement, too high on the chest. Anyone who's worn a real badge would never make that mistake." He turned to the second man. "Your fabric, cheap polyester blend. Real enforcement-grade uniforms don't melt in a dryer. Yours would be ruined in a week." Then his eyes landed on the leader, the man with the sunglasses. Marcus plucked the so-called warrant from his hands, holding it between two fingers as though it were contaminated. "And this?" he said, tapping the paper. "A spelling mistake. Neighborhood, with an extra E. You really thought that would pass?" The room fell silent. The imposters exchanged uneasy glances. Their earlier arrogance was evaporating, replaced with doubt. The masks were slipping. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority radiated off him like heat. For years he had interrogated criminals, spies, and hardened killers. Compared to them, these three were amateurs, boys pretending to be wolves. The leader tried to recover, puffing out his chest. "Listen, Johnson. You think you're smart, but you're digging yourself deeper. You don't cooperate, this will go worse for you." Marcus leaned in, so close that the man had no choice but to look into his eyes. The reflection of his own fear stared back at him in Marcus's steady gaze. "You really don't get it yet, do you?" Marcus whispered. And then, right on cue, it happened. The sharp screech of tires outside shattered the tense silence. Black SUVs rolled up to the curb, doors flying open in unison. The thud of boots hitting pavement echoed like war drums. Within seconds, real federal agents poured out, vests strapped, weapons drawn, commands sharp and practiced. The imposters jumped at the sound, confusion flooding their faces. The leader stood halfway up from the couch, glancing toward the window, eyes wide. "Wait, what the—" The front door slammed open and half a dozen FBI agents stormed in with precision. "Federal agents, hands up. Hands where we can see them!" The imposters froze. Their bravado dissolved instantly. The blood drained from their faces as they realized the truth. They hadn't cornered a vulnerable homeowner. They hadn't intimidated a scared neighbor. They had just walked into the home of Agent Marcus Johnson, the same FBI, operative whose name was whispered like a ghost story in the criminal underworld. Cartels knew his face. Hackers feared his methods. Spies cursed his name. And now these three frauds, dressed in dollar store uniforms, were staring at the man who had put some of the most dangerous people in the world behind bars. One agent shoved the imposters to the ground, zip-tying their wrists with brutal efficiency. Another read them their rights while Marcus stood calmly, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. The leader stammered, This was a mistake. We didn't know." Marcus finally allowed himself a small, cold smile. "No, you didn't know. But now you do." As the imposters were dragged to their feet, cuffed and powerless, their tough act had completely crumbled. Their eyes darted between the real agents and Marcus. Disbelief etched across their faces. They had thought they were hunters. Instead, they had been prey all along. Neighbors peeked through curtains outside, their quiet street now swarming with black vehicles and armed men. They whispered to each other in shock, pointing at Marcus's house. realizing the friendly neighbor, who waved during his morning jog, was someone far more formidable than they ever imagined. Inside, Marcus stepped forward, addressing the cuffed men one last time. His tone was cool, almost casual. "You came here thinking you could scare me with fake authority. But authority isn't in a badge or a uniform or a piece of paper. Authority comes from truth. And you three wouldn't recognize truth if it stood in front of you." The imposters were shoved toward the waiting SUVs, heads hung in defeat. Their scam had ended the moment they knocked on Marcus Johnson's door. And as the vehicles pulled away, neighbors still staring, Marcus turned back into his home, calm as ever. For him, this wasn't chaos. This wasn't an interruption. It was just another day at work, the lesson behind the story. As the imposters were dragged out of the house in handcuffs, Marcus stepped onto his porch. The cool evening air hit his face, but he hardly noticed. What he did notice were the eyes, neighbors peeking out from behind curtains, heads turning from across the street, doorbells quietly recording. For years, Marcus Johnson had blended in perfectly, to most. He was just the quiet man at the end of the block, the one who waved politely, kept his yard pristine, and handed out candy to kids every Halloween. But in that moment, as flashing red and blue lights bounced off every house on the cul-de-sac, his secret world briefly collided with his ordinary one. The neighbors looked at him with wide eyes, whispering to each other. What just happened? Who are these men? Why are FBI vehicles swarming our street? Marcus didn't offer explanations. He simply nodded to the agents, his calm demeanor unshaken, and walked back inside. For him, the chaos outside was nothing new. It was routine. Later that week, the truth came out. Press releases revealed that the so-called HOA police were nothing more than a criminal crew. Their scheme was simple but cruel. They targeted wealthy black homeowners, banking on intimidation and fake authority. They'd show up in phony uniforms, wave bogus citations, and threaten arrest if homeowners didn't pay fines on the spot. It had worked more than once. Families too scared to question them had handed over thousands of dollars, believing they were dealing with legitimate authority. The scam relied on fear of power, fear of confrontation, fear of being singled out. But when they chose Marcus Johnson, they made a fatal mistake. They didn't pick just any homeowner. They picked one of the FBI's most experienced undercover agents, a man who had built his career dismantling scams, far more sophisticated than theirs, a man who knew exactly how fear was used as a weapon, and exactly how to dismantle it. Marcus could have ended it the moment they knocked. He could have flashed his badge, exposed them instantly, and embarrassed them on the spot. But he didn't. Instead, he let the game play out. He allowed them inside. He let them show their fake papers. He let them talk, threaten, and dig themselves deeper. Because real justice isn't about being loud. It isn't about flexing power for show. Real justice is about patience, strategy, and timing. It's about giving people enough rope to reveal their true intentions, and then tightening it when the moment is right. When the story hit the news, it exploded. Headlines across the country carried the bizarre twist. Fake HOA police, arrested by real FBI agent. Talk shows laughed in disbelief. Social media lit up with memes and commentary. People shook their heads, asking, how could anyone think they'd get away with something so ridiculous? But beneath the humor, there was a sobering lesson. Because scams like this don't always look so obvious, fake authority can take many forms. A fake badge, a fake phone call, a fake letter in the mail. And ordinary people, good, honest people, can be tricked if they don't know their rights or if they're too afraid to challenge what looks official. That's why Marcus's story struck a chord. It wasn't just about three imposters making a mistake. It was about something bigger. It was a reminder for everyone watching. Never trust everything at face value. Just because someone wears a uniform or waves paperwork doesn't mean it's real. Always know your rights. Fear only works when people don't realize the power they already have. Never underestimate quiet people. The ones who don't boast, don't shout, and don't draw attention. They're often carrying strength you can't imagine. For Marcus, though, it wasn't about headlines or applause. He didn't crave recognition. He didn't do interviews. To him, it was just another day on the job, another mission completed, another set of criminals taken off the streets. Because Marcus didn't fight for fame, he fought for people. For families who couldn't defend themselves. For homeowners who didn't know their rights. For neighbors who just wanted to feel safe in their own homes. That was his mission. That was his oath. And he lived it every single day. So the next time someone tries to scare you with fake power or empty threats, remember Marcus Johnson, the quiet man, who taught 3 imposters that justice always knocks louder. Because at the end of the day, real power doesn't come from pretending. Real power comes from truth. And truth always shows up. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping true crime style tales, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one.